our next speaker is Captain Luke Parker, who graciously is joining us from Canada at what is for him an unfortunately horrible hour of the morning. So first off, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time, Luke. So Luke is a geospatial intelligence officer. He was commissioned into the Corps of Royal Engineers in 2013. His career to date has spanned many different areas with the Royal Engineers, and most recently he was seconded into government as a senior civil servant. And whilst in that role, he served with the Joint Biosecurity Centre's Analytics and Analysis Directorate throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of his responsibilities was providing ministerial level support to decision making. So Luke's going to be talking to us about his career, and also what I imagine has been a pretty intense 18 months to 2 years for Luke. So yeah, on that note, please welcome Captain Luke Parker.
Okay, I think we got it.
Yep, thank you.
Is my screen sharing properly? Okay, thank you. Morning all, and it is 5:43 this morning in Ottawa, Canada. But I wouldn't have it any other way. When I was asked to speak here, I jumped at the opportunity, and I'm glad to be here. So thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm Captain Luke Parker. Thank you for the introduction. I'm part of the British Army's Royal Engineers, and I'm also representing the Institute of Royal Engineers in Starry this morning. I thought I'd go for quite an edgy title: Guns, Germs and Steel, the Royal Engineers' Contribution to COVID Response. But by no means am I selling that the Army has supported the COVID response with guns. It's just a rip-off of Jared Diamond's Gun, Germs and Steel, the Fates of Human Societies. But I can talk of two of the three of them, which is the germs and the steel element. So over the next 20 to 30 minutes, I'm going to cover the following topics: a brief introduction into the Corps of Royal Engineers, the Institute of Royal Engineers, my career and experiences to date, and then how the Royal Engineers contributed to the COVID response. Hopefully there'll be a short amount of time for immediate questions at the end. However, as the events team have put, if you do have any questions for me, my information is at the last slide. I'm happy for people to contact me, and I'll be back for the Q&A session later. So the Royal Engineers can trace their origins all the way back to the military engineers brought to England by William the Conqueror. Specifically, we like to think that our founding member is Bishop Gundalf of Rochester Cathedral, and we can claim 900 years of unbroken service to the Crown. During this time, major military construction tasks have included dams and reservoirs in British colonial India at the time, the Rideau Canal in Canada, of which I'm looking forward to ice skating down in a couple of weeks, and naval and civilian ports in the UK. British military engineers have also been involved in many civilian projects too, including the construction of the Pentonville Prison in London in 1842, and the world famous concert venue, the Royal Albert Hall, in 1871, pictured on the slide. The Royal Engineers are called sappers. Our motto is ubique or ubique, depending on how you pronounce it, and that means everywhere. And I think as we go through this presentation, you'll start to understand why our motto is that. So we're quite a unique, motivated and intelligent body of engineers within the military. All our soldiers are multi-skilled, trained first as soldiers, then combat engineers, and finally tradesmen, meaning that we're one of the only people in the military that are triple trained. We provide essential support in all areas of defence in peacetime and on operations. At the front lines, we support the rest of the army and defence by bridging rivers, using explosives to clear obstacles, and clearing routes through minefields. And behind the front lines, we improve transport routes, construct camps, build runways and repair runways, carry out bomb disposal, as well as using different specialist skills to purify water and make sure the survivability of the soldiers increases. As I said, each soldier is triple trained, and we currently have 19 trades to choose from draftsman to electrician, carpenter to EOD and search. And then this doesn't include the speciality trades and academic roles that commissioned officers can pursue, with several paid different masters and PhD courses fully funded and available through the Royal Engineers. This to me means that the career of a sapper is only really limited by what you want from it. And I'm going to just share with you my experience and what I've done with that opportunity. Current operational deployments that we've got are South Sudan, Estonia, and the Falkland Islands. However, sappers have supported every major operation the British Army has deployed since World War I. Briefly going to touch on the Institute of Royal Engineers and our President, Major General Nick Kavanagh's mission statement is, the Institution of Royal Engineers is a learned society that seeks to advance the art and science of military engineering by sharing experiences, best practice, and emergent thinking. And to do this, we have 4 lines of operation. The first of which is to recognize our people. So the Institute of Royal Engineers are currently the only military engineering institution that holds all the engineering licenses to award EngTech, iEng, and CEng. Then to support professional effectiveness, serving to stimulate and encourage professional debate and study of military engineering, and maintaining effective relationships with academia, industry, and other stakeholders. And there's a bunch of sub-societies within Institute of Royal Engineers, dependent on what tickles your fancy, whether it's military history or professional engineering. The third pillar is to learn through the Knowledge Centre, sharing best practice and knowledge. And then finally is to connect, to enable individual members to build and maintain a strong personal network, whether that's a social network, a professional network, or wider, across serving, retired, and military communities of engineering-minded individuals. For example, we have a group called Sappers in the City, which aims to meet pre and post in a post-COVID world once a month with former Royal Engineers that now work in the city and like to maintain ties with currently serving members. So a little bit about my career, and I don't think there is a standard career model within the Royal Engineers. Like I said, you can make your own luck and you can change your career to fit what you want to do. So I commissioned into the Royal Engineers after a year of officer training at the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst, and I commissioned into the Engineers in 2013. And I was a geography graduate from the University of Leeds. My first command was as a Royal Engineer search advisor within a search and explosive ordnance disposal regiment, aka bomb disposal. And during this time, I was able to travel to Norway, to Pakistan, and to Jordan. A truly great experience, understanding and learning about different cultures, and also removing some explosive ordnance threats while we were there. After this, I became an instructor at the Combat Engineer Training Regiment, 3RSME. My secondary role here was also the regimental ski officer. And over the 2 years, I managed to get on 8 weeks of skiing, taking my soldiers away to Austria and France and teaching them how to ski. It was while I was at 3RSME Regiment that I applied and was accepted onto my Masters of Science degree, which was fully funded by the military in geospatial intelligence, which meant that I was able to go to the University of Cranfield on my salary for the year and finish off a master's in comfortably knowing that I didn't have to start working as a bouncer again. Similarly, you could also choose to do a professionally qualified engineer course at this point in your career, which is a year of additional civil, mechanical, or electrical engineering, followed by 6 months in industry placement around the world. And my friends that are on there, they seem to all either want to go to Australia or the US to do their 6-month industrial placement. And this allows you to begin building your chartership portfolio. When I finished my MSc, I was then sent to the National Centre of Geospatial Intelligence, NCGI, as a geospatial intelligence officer. And it was during this job that I was seconded into government. So my thesis was on spatial patterns in disease outbreaks on the UK, and I finished that in 2019. And so I was quite well placed in 2020 to start adding some value within government of what I was looking at with spatial and data analytics. And I think here is where I first saw the value that government and external agencies place on military thought processes, which I'll touch on in a little while, specifically around crisis management, of which at the time it was a crisis management. There was a lot of panic, and both structurally and within the public domain, and so having a steady leadership presence benefited, of which the military was not the sole provider. My latest role is a British Army exchange officer within the Canadian Armed Forces, and so I'm living here for 2 years with my family. And an exciting development in the last few months is my application for the European Space Agency's astronaut candidate program. And all the skills that have required me to apply to the ESA as an astronaut candidate have been entirely grown and developed within my time within the Royal Engineers. And I've used pretty much all of my experience over the last 9-10 years to meet the application criteria. And so I'll be pursuing that while I'm in Canada. And I think my career, which I've just cantered through, is a perfect example really of the varied opportunities in the Royal Engineers and what they can offer. Regardless of your academic background, being a geographer, I've been able to work towards chartership and achieve chartership through the Institute of Royal Engineers as a chartered engineer, whilst exploring the world, gaining some more higher education and valuable network connections. So I'm now going to discuss the Royal Engineers response and support to government in COVID. Project Nightingale is probably the best known military contribution to the COVID response, and it was the NHS operation to significantly enhance its capacity by transforming large sporting and conference facilities into field hospitals. So this was supported by the Royal Engineers professionally qualified engineers mainly, as well as hundreds of SAPA trade persons. And it followed three phases. The first was the reconnaissance, where military assessment teams consisting of professional engineers, medics, and logisticians conducted over 100 site visits around the UK, refining the NHS's understanding and then agreeing the necessity and parameters for the build of 11 different Nightingale sites around the UK. And this was primarily conducted by 170 Infrastructure Support Engineer Group. The second phase was build. So alongside contractors, the SAPers played an important role due to their ability to mobilize quickly, which we'll see shortly. The most significant contribution here of the Royal Engineers was their essential skills in crisis management, troubleshooting, project management, and relationship building between the contractors themselves and the NHS. And then finally was to operate, albeit in a smaller capacity, building teams of military medics, which were placed at readiness, supported by non-specialist engineers that received additional training. And although we aided in the construction of 11 sites, I'm going to briefly look at the Birmingham Nightingale site, which was constructed at the exhibition centre in Birmingham. And I'm just going to pull out, I'm not going to go through each day, but I'm going to pull out a few key points just to demonstrate a few things. So day 0, 12 hours after the military assessment team, made up of Major Angela Laycock and a clerk of works, arrived on site, they'd concluded that it was a suitable location. So the speed here was key. They were based in Nottingham. They got to Birmingham and conducted the recce within 12 hours. By the end of day 3, the first draft design of all the CAD drawings and concept designs fitting 24 bed wards to the existing infrastructure, the first draft layout, which fitted over 500 beds in the first 4 halls, and an ITU ward of over 100 beds were completed. So that's by the end of day 3. Moving on to day 8, and all the flooring was delivered and laid whilst the utility installation continued. A concrete pad formwork for the oxygen lines and tanks was erected, ready for a pour on day 9. And a rapidly curing concrete mix was planned to be poured the following day. So that would only take 24 hours to cure before we could strike the formwork and load it with the equipment. By day 10, the formwork was struck, the evaporation towers were installed, the oxygen tanks arrived on site and were all ready to be installed. By day 13, the installation of all the services and flooring was complete, and Royal Engineers plumbers began the plumbing work. And by day 15, the blackout test and final furnishing was complete, with the ward being ready. So from getting the call on day 0, day 15, the ward was complete. Phase 2 would see the expansion to over 2,000 beds in the next 2 weeks, using an additional 5 halls, and that would see the maximum number of beds reach over 4,000. And to me, this really shows threefold or fourfold what the Royal Engineers here had to offer. So first of all, we have an exceptionally high trained professional workforce of 8,000 people. We're rapidly deployable in times where getting 8,000 trained people is going to be time consuming. And we've got the technical leadership experience to manage lots of stakeholders in what here was an extremely politically charged environment. And there was a lot of pressure from senior leadership teams, both within the military, within government and political, to get this done and get it done right. And that's why the Royal Engineers deploying en masse so quickly to 11 different sites and having such a tangible impact was fantastic. So I'm going to talk a little bit now on my area of specialist expertise, which is data analytics. So the Royal Engineers data experts deployed over 60 people in several government departments to provide strategic and decision support. This is where my expertise were used, and over the last 18 months, I've worked within the Cabinet Office, the Joint Biosecurity Centre, and the Department for Health and Social Care. However, Royal Engineers have also supported the Vaccine Task Force and also the Community Testing Programme, which is the asymptomatic testing, or the LFD rapid test sites. And I won't talk about all of it, but I'll talk about the bits that meant the most to me. And so the most influential, I believe, of this work was during my time within the Joint Biosecurity Centre. And I led the early warning, local concentrations and regional analysis teams, 3 teams, and my team specialised in data science, geospatial analysis, web services, and visualization. The teams that I were responsible for, what we had to do quite quickly was support the data streamlining analysis and recommendations on COVID-19 lockdowns, also known as non-pharmaceutical interventions, NPIs. And these had to go straight up to the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Chris Whitty, and the Secretary of the State, who at the time was Matt Hancock. The recommendations were a result of several different data sets, which were manipulated in lots of different ways, and included testing data, the positivity of that testing data, a lot of locational data, as well as mobility and demographic data, leading to an accurate picture, an accurate epidemiological picture at different scales of what was happening in each area. And from that, you were able to try and find causation. And the visualizations that my team produced were also used to strengthen the daily COVID-19 briefs to the nation. I'm sure we can all remember these last year. And every day, different people would stand up. There'd be a bunch of different maps, and I was behind the scenes with my team making all these maps. And again, I think this reinforces the real quick deployment of highly specialized teams to add decision support and leadership into high pressure environments. But we also wanted to go further than this, and some things within some of the teams within the advanced analytics cells were looking at the effectiveness of lockdowns. Like, no one wanted to put a lockdown or even recommend a lockdown without understanding if these lockdowns were being effective. And so to do this, we were using machine learning algorithms on observed data for testing and deaths. And so once a lockdown was put in place, we could continue to observe real world data and compare it to the model counterfactuals. So for example, if the lockdown wasn't put in place based on the previous data. And from this, you could calculate the accumulated reduction of cases or deaths, or in some cases there wasn't a reduction, and this can be plotted there. There's an example at the bottom of your screen. Similarly, you can use Google mobility data, which Google made all their mobility data open source over COVID, through their community mobility reports, which show how people's movements over times in different domains change. For example, parks, residential, supermarkets, travel hubs, and the like. Some of the more interesting projects that I was involved with was a collaboration with the Office of National Statistics on wastewater-based epidemiology, WBE. And this offers a scalable solution by using the existing UK wastewater infrastructure around the UK, which for those that don't know, we already test wastewater to look for polio, which polio has been eradicated in the UK. And so if one wastewater site around the UK was to have a positive polio sample, that would be extremely significant. But we were able to change this to also look for COVID. The viral shedding component of COVID is really pronounced within fecal matter, and so testing wastewater is one of the best ways to determine a viral prevalence, which is really hard to do through testing, which would only give you an instance. And the incidence of testing injects a lot of bias into your data. Certain demographics have a high rate of testing and others have a very low rate of testing. And the amount of marketing and effort to try and get those people to get tested more so we got the data, this is just a much more efficient way of doing it. And what's really good is that it could be scaled. And so you could do it for a whole town, or you could do it to an individual road or a school or a factory, and it eliminates any of the testing bias, which would be done by setting up like an asymptomatic test site there. And from this, there's some the map that's on your screen there is from Liverpool, when the military was sent to Liverpool, and it shows how you can map prevalence across ward boundaries, which the geography of ward boundaries are quite interesting because it doesn't overlay the wastewater infrastructure beneath it. And so you were finding that where the data was saying high prevalence wasn't actually where it was coming from, because we were testing in a different ward boundary, but the wastewater shed was coming from somewhere else. And so that was an interesting development. So just to summarize what we just cantered through there, the Royal Engineers are the home of a bunch of highly trained soldiers, combat engineers and officers. We offer a career that can span civil, mech and electrical engineering, as well as bomb disposal, crisis management and trades all across the world. The professional recognition, development and accreditation of our soldiers and officers is shepherded by the Institute, which is the Institute of Royal Engineers. We currently have 10,000 members, and we're the only military institution that holds the licenses to award engineer technician, IEng and CEng through the Engineering Council. We also take members that have never served in the Royal Engineers, so it's open to anyone's application now. And as a globally respected, highly qualified and rapidly deployable pool of tradespersons, civil engineers and subject matter experts, the Royal Engineers has contributed exceptionally across the strategic and operational levels of support to government and governmental organisations during the national response to COVID-19, living up to our motto, UBEAC. The sappers have enabled, in my opinion, the rapid NHS capability building across 11 Nightingale sites, as well as vital decision support to the highest levels of government within the Joint Biosecurity Centre, Cabinet Office and Department for Health and Social Care. That's the end of my bit this morning. My contact details are there, and I don't know how we're doing for time, Murat.
What would you say the single most impactful measure that we can all take together to help society as a whole moving forwards is through moving forward through the winter is I guess so yeah, I mean that's my thought on that, my question. So I'm happy to leave that with you and hand over to Murat for any further questions after that.
Okay, yeah, I'll tackle those two straight away. So currently within Europe, there was 22,000 applicants across Europe for the European Space Agency's call for astronauts. And they're working through those applications. I think it took the ESA back a little bit, ESA. I didn't think they expected that many applications. And so they're starting to work through those. I've yet to hear if I've made the next cut, which takes it down to 1,500. So I've got my fingers crossed. And I believe that they're looking for 4 astronauts, 2 for a International Space Station mission and 2 for a joint European-US moon mission post 2025-26 time. So you've got to be in it to win it, and I am now in the mix. So hopefully I get past the next stage. And even if I don't get all the way, which is highly probable, I just think the opportunity and the training, it would be a fantastic opportunity. And so that's why I'm going for it. And then secondly, it's a little bit different where I am at the moment because Canada has a different social view of COVID, and its government operates differently to the UK's in that there's a federal municipal element to its governance. I think we had this debate last year in winter 2020 where there was a lot of media hype about, you know, this big wave's coming at winter, and what we needed to do was detach the social element. So wintertime tends to be worse for any kind of infectious disease because people stop socializing outside and start moving inside, and so the social distancing of people becomes less and airflow is less in most buildings in the UK, especially, and so the risk of getting anything from common cold upwards increases. What I think is interesting now is detaching the amount of cases, and I try and tune into the British media sometimes. And the other day I was seeing, there's 50,000 cases today, and it's getting scary again. But cases could be much larger than that, as long as hospitalizations are a lot less. So, and that is, we have broke the link between hospitalizations and cases. Whereas if you think back to like June 2020, where we were having 100,000 cases a day and we were having thousands of hospitalizations a day, I think now 50,000 cases is producing less than 50 hospitalizations. And so no hospitalizations are good, but having that link broken, I think, is key. I don't know what I'm now out of the loop. And I think if you've been out the loop for more than a week, you are well out of the loop. And so I can't comment any further on what will be the most significant factor next. I know that people are pushing boosters of vaccination, and beyond that, I don't know what's happening. I know here in Canada now it's now mandatory to enter any kind of restaurant or social setting to prove vaccination. So Canada now issue vaccine passports, which can be put onto your phone, and rightly or wrongly have issued a decree that by the end of October, if you are a Crown or a civil employee and you're not double vaccinated, then you'll be placed on unpaid leave. That's their stance. But I don't. So yes, there's some media backlash to that, but that's the decision the Canadian government have made.
Sort of connecting to that as well, I have another question actually to link with that. It is to do with the COVID testing. You mentioned the wastewater can be actually analyzed for COVID symptoms or COVID sort of infections. Do you think this will be ever implemented?
I mean, it's already being implemented.
Okay.
It has. I mean, we've been using this for polio for a long time. The COVID application, the Office of National Statistics Data Science Campus were leading on this. Fantastic organization, super talented people, and I learned a lot. There was a small. Initially, it was piloted a couple of places. I guess the pros there are what you pick up through the wastewater analysis is not only asymptomatic people, of which we've heard a lot of, but pre-symptomatic. So it's an exceptional tool. Like I've said, it removes can't fully remove bias, but it removes a lot of bias, and it picks up people before they even start showing symptoms, which allows a better understanding of where we need to direct testing to.
Yeah.
However, ethically, I could understand there's some ethical considerations with wastewater testing, because you can't just pick up COVID there. It picks up a lot of things. It picks up the underlying drug use habits of the population that you're testing. It picks up all sorts of other different things, which ethically we need to be careful of this. Yes, it's a good tool. It's a good tool for looking at COVID, but I don't think at this stage there would be any appetite to look at its use for anything else in terms of like policing illegal substance use or something like that. And I think we need to be really mindful of what we're using this data for, and make sure it stays something positive we're using it for, and doesn't become anything else.
It makes it clear to me that you can only sort of talk about the location, what that population is experiencing, and almost tag those people with certain illnesses. And yes, there are some ethical concerns around this, isn't it? I totally appreciate that. Gary, I think we're pushing on with the time.
So I was just about to jump in.
Gary, I just want to add something just for 1 minute, just to add on Yeah, what Luke said. So first of all, thank you, Luke. Fantastic presentation, and you've done the Royal Engineers very proud. And I'll be passing on feedback next month when I'm in Chatham. And just to add on what you said, that the Institution of Royal Engineers opened up into civilians in 2018, and I was the first one to be admitted. So so they admit me as a fellow. So whoever is listening, maybe if they're too young, they can aspire to become. But if you have an interest in military engineering and you support what the sappers do, yeah, you're welcome to join the Institution of Royal Engineers. So my membership number is C for civilian 001. So yeah, I just had to add this on the conversation. So yeah, very happy to be here and share that. So yeah, well done. And that's it. That brings it to lunchtime. Over to you, Gary.